Obviously very excited, really excited for Bo. It's always a good outcome to reach an agreement with one of your best players, and he's been so integral to this team and this franchise for some time now. So a great day for the organization to get to this point, and very, very happy for Bo and his family. He has certainly earned it, has been one of the best players in the game, and we think he's going to continue to be. And so it's again, just something that we're very excited about. As far as the process, it's I would be talking for too long to talk about the nuances and subtleties to the back and forth. But obviously we ended up in a situation where there was the potential of a hearing, and fortunately we're both motivated to do everything we could to avoid that. Having said that, you have to be cognizant of being respectful of the process, being respectful of how those values are determined. And fortunately, we were able to do that with Bo and his representation and Greg Ginsky.
And the certainty of knowing his salaries the next couple of years, always value with that, of course, but is there a little more value involved in that now that the payroll is higher and you'll be trying to work with that the next couple of years with a higher number?
Yeah, I think we are fortunate to be have so much support from Edward Rogers and everyone at Rogers Communications. So we have the ability to continue to make this team better and better. And, we were fortunate for those reasons. We were fortunate to be able to get this outcome. Cost certainty does have some value, but that was not the driver.
All right. Thank you, Russ.
All right, Keeks.
You're up, Shai.
Hey, Ross, congrats on getting the deal done.
Shai.
I'm curious, from a sort of philosophical standpoint, being filed in trial, as I believe most, if not all, teams in the majors are, how does your experience in this process with Bo and sort of getting to the relatively close to a hearing before getting to the multi-year deal make you reflect on how that the file and trial process works for you as a club, and sort of how it helps you or maybe hinders you or potentially creates some issues in dealing with players?
I think it's just being respectful of what the process is built to do. And if you're not fully tapping into every aspect of the process, which a hearing is just a part of the process, then you're not fully utilizing it and respecting it as it relates to running the best possible business. That doesn't mean thinking about saving every possible dollar all the time. That means building the most efficient roster that you possibly can. As we do every single deal, what we have to always be cognizant of is building the best possible team around each deal. And that means having discipline, and sometimes that means being willing to go to a hearing.
And I think intellectually, rationally, I think players can understand why they get paid certain things and why there might be some disparities, but there are some inequities that are sort of built into the system that can be created that, if Bo has a little bit more service time, he ends up on the same salary trajectory as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. instead of the one that he's on, and that impacts his earning over multiple years. Just that can, for some, perhaps create some emotional response. I'm wondering how you maybe talk through things with players who feel frustrations within that system, even though they're intellectually, they may understand this is what's collectively bargained.
Yeah, you try to do that before you're negotiating, because we are very respectful of, once that begins, that we are almost entirely dealing with their representation, and that representation is speaking for them. So everything that you said is fair, and your question is certainly fair. And we are, once the negotiation begins, you're focused on the best possible outcome for both, and obviously representing one side, of the deal, but still thinking about and being cognizant of wanting what's best for the other, for the individual. And again, fortunately, Greg Ginsky and his team did a great job of representing Bo and put us in a position where we could, in our view, find a win-win deal.
All right. Thanks, Ross.
All right, Shai.
Go ahead, Ben.
Hey Ross, thanks for the time. You may have just answered this in speaking to Shai there, but I gather that it was mostly with the representatives and not with Bo. But did you talk to Bo at all in the course of this process?
After, before and after, but not during. Just again, that I would say everything I just said to Shai.
And what's your sense of where Bo's at? When you spoke to him after the deal.
Oh, he is very, very happy and excited for himself, excited for the team. And it is, as we've talked a lot about, it can become a very stressful process. It's not one that is very common in the world of compensation. So, we try to use empathy. We try to explain and use our rationale before the process begins and after the process is over. But during the process, we're very respectful of, not trying to influence anything and really respect the process.
For sure. And then this is obviously a 3-year deal, after which point, Bo would be slated to hit free agency. Were there any talks in the course of this process about extending things beyond that 3-year term and doing something bigger?
Yeah, we're always open to that. That dialogue is ongoing, as it is with many players. And this is a good step in that process, because ultimately you don't get any deal beyond 1 year done that isn't sharing some risk. Those are the deals that when there are extensions and when there are, extended pre-arb deals, they're always in and around sharing. So they always involve sharing risk.
For sure. Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Ross. Further to that point about sharing risk, that was what I was going to ask you about. That you talk about that a lot when you're talking about multi-year deals, and understanding that you were talking to the representatives and not to Bo himself. How difficult is it to get to a point where you're at a comfortable point sharing risk with someone like Bo, who is so secure in his ability and knows what he's capable of doing and knows what, if things go well for him, what the potential is for him to make over the 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, he was awesome about that. And I think he does have the belief that he will continue to be one of the best players in the game, and as do we. If that weren't the case, this deal doesn't happen. These types of deals happen with MVP caliber players, and we believe that he is an MVP caliber player and will continue to be. I think one of the things that we can point to towards your question are the escalators in the deal that cover some upside for him that we would be exceptionally happy if he was receiving those accolades and then receiving those escalators.
So that's not, and what you guys announced is a 33.6. There are escalators that could take it potentially how much higher?
Correct. Yeah, there's escalators for MVP votes in the deal.
How high could it get if he gets?
That's public information.
Okay.
We'll go here to Caitlin and then follow up from Shai. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Hi, Ross. Thanks for your time. Just one question for me. You talked about how this can build sort of goodwill, obviously, with Bo and that partnership. Do you think that these kinds of deals can also build goodwill to other players in general who might see themselves in a similar position as Bo, whether approaching free agency or still in that arbitration period?
I think anytime you're finding a solution is good for an organization and the environment. At the same time, had it gone to a hearing, every team has to be willing to for that to occur, or the process just doesn't work. But I do think your question is a good one, and I know that our team was excited to see that outcome. We would much rather be having this meeting today than talking about the outcome of a hearing, and I think that goes for our entire team. And there's no doubt in my mind that news in many ways was received positively on a group level, and as you referred to certain individuals.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Okay, go ahead, Shai.
Hey Russ, you touched a little bit about on this a little bit with the escalators, but I'm just curious what you might be able to share about how the process of figuring out the salaries for years 2 and 3 in this kind of deal work. Like, what kind of projections do you put in? And
Yeah.
then I guess what role did the escalators do you feel that play into sort of making everything come together?
Right. So it's an interesting balance when you're just talking 1 year arbitration. Everything is based on history. You're always looking directly at comps. And there's sometimes a raise argument that comes into play as well. So there's different comps that are factored in depending upon which strategy you take. And when you go into a longer term deal, that is the basis for how you're determining those values, but it becomes less academic and more about how much risk you're willing to share. So it's not as focused on the exact comps in an extension discussion. In the case of Bo in a 3-year deal, it became based on the framework of what those raises could be, and then ultimately sharing the risk and what those outcomes might be on the low side. And we're entirely focused on them being on the high side. And that's why we're excited to include the escalators for them.
And would everything kind of be even as you're kind of figuring out year 2, did you guys have to kind of figure out what's a fair number for year 1 in order to understand how you'd escalate to year 2 and year 3 still?
Yeah, I mean,
Kind of agreement?
yes. And I think that had been pretty well framed before we got to an extension discussion. We knew where they were seeing it, and they knew where we were seeing it. We had extensive dialogue, and that was the beginning. That was the foundation for finding a deal.
All right. Thanks, Russ.
All right, Shai.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Those of you traveling to Florida in the near future, have a safe travels there, and looking forward to doing this all with you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rod. Congrats on the bump, Rod.
Oh, thanks.